Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown slate for tonight on Draftkings. We have the Patriots versus the Jets. And it's going to be a bit of an ugly game here, only a 41-point over-under in Vegas. And both these teams are just not very good, especially the New York Jets. And we really only have one splashy play on this slate, and it would be Cam Newton. And even then, he has not been playing that well this season. But outside of Cam, you got Joe Flacco, Brashad Perriman, Damian Harris, James White. People don't get excited for those kind of guys, and people get at least a little bit pumped up for Cam Newton, but the 2020 version of Cam Newton is definitely not something to get super excited about, but it's what we got to work with here. If this was a main slate game, there's absolutely no way I would really have any interest in any of these guys, but since it's a showdown slate, we got to break down this entire game, unfortunately, but hey, it's still football on a Monday night nonetheless, so I guess we're going to be somewhat excited for it. But before we continue, if you guys find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll show the quarterback position. And up top, we have Cam Newton at $13,200. Is he super expensive? Yes, he is. But I feel like he's almost a necessity on this slate. Now, again, this is a very ugly slate. Like, we're talking that the good plays are going to be guys like Damian Harris, James White, Jacoby Myers, those kind of guys. Those are the good plays on this slate. So Cam Newton, he's far and away pretty much the top dog here. I know he's a bit expensive, but there's value on this slate to get it in. And this is just a good matchup versus the New York Jets. Now, I know he's not been that good this season at all. If you're looking at his overall numbers, only 190 passing yards per game, less than half a passing touchdown per game. That is awful. Over a pick per game. But the one thing that makes him at least viable for fantasy purposes is that he runs the ball quite a bit each and every single game. He's averaging about 50 rushing yards per game, which is a little bit over a passing touchdown floor per game if you just factor that into Draftkings points. And then he's running the ball over 8 times per game as well with a rushing touchdown per game. So I like the rushing upside we get with Cam Newton, and this is a really good matchup versus the New York Jets. They are ranked 31st DVA versus the pass, and they're allowing 23.2 DraftKings points per game to quarterbacks, which is 27th in the league, and about 300 passing yards per game as well. Now, he's going to be without his two top wide receivers in Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry, but again, this is a showdown slate, guys. We're going to have to play some quarterbacks, and Cam Newton, I feel like he's by far the best play on the slate, and that's not really saying much because even then, if this was a main slate, I'm probably not going to be playing Cam Newton here unless he was super cheap. But given it's a showdown slate and he runs the ball, yeah, I'll have some interest here, and there's enough value to get him in. If you want to make him your captain, I have no issues with that at all. But, man, again, ugly slate. But Cam Newton kind of head and shoulders above the field here, in my opinion. Now, going down low, we have Joe Flacco at 9,400. Sam Darnold's going to be out for this game, which, again, just makes this slate even worse because now we have to watch Joe Flacco in primetime. But he's $9,400, and since he's a quarterback on a showdown slate, I guess we'll have some interest. Stephon Gilmore's not going to be playing, so that at least makes the secondary a bit softer. But we can't really expect many good things here from Joe Flacco. Like, just looking at the 2 games he's played this season, Week 5 and Week 6, I know he came in versus Denver, but it doesn't really count. But he had 13.8 points versus Arizona, less than 200 passing yards and a passing touchdown. Then the next week versus Miami, he threw the ball 44 times, which is nice, but he only had 6.4 points, didn't throw a touchdown, had a pick, and less than 190 passing yards. I can't expect many good things here from Joe Flacco, but again, it's a showdown slate, and if we're going to look at the rest of these plays, like when I go to the running back position, I show you guys the wide receivers, those guys are all pretty uninspiring for the most part. So Joe Flacco, I think he's a fine play. I'm not saying he's going to have a good game, but if he gets you around 200 yards, maybe throws a touchdown, maybe if he has a really good game, he throws 2 touchdowns, I guess you'll be pretty happy with it. I don't think this is going to be a very high-scoring slate. Maybe it surprises us and it turns into like a 60-point game, which I will not complain because I want to watch an exciting football game, but I'd say it's a bleak outlook here for Joe Flacco. If you don't want to play him, I totally get that. If you just want to need some skill position players, and if you're looking at how the New England Patriots have been, I almost said the Carolina Panthers because I was thinking of Cam Newton, how the New England Patriots have been versus quarterbacks this season, pretty stingy. 19th DVA versus the pass, and allowing only 15.6 DraftKings points per game, which is the fewest in the league, only 228 passing yards per game, and less than 1.5 passing touchdowns. So if you want to fade Joe Flacco, I totally get it. It's a showdown slate, though, so I feel pretty comfortable having both quarterbacks in my lineups, but there's definitely reasons that I want to play Joe Flacco, because first of all, he's not good. Now, he's going to have Jamison Crowder and Brashad Perriman back this week, which they were out last time the Jets played, so I guess that's a bit of a boost there, but even then, I can't really expect Joe Flacco to come out there for 300-plus yards and a few touchdowns, although I don't think you really need him to do that on this slate, just given the options we have, so he's a somewhat safe play with limited upside, in my opinion. Then we'll move on to the running back position, which it's a bit gross because both these backfields are definitely not ones we would target most weeks, and even then it's a bit iffy here. But we're going to start with Damian Harris at a massive 10,200 price tag. I was kind of surprised that he was this expensive. I mean, you got White at 6,400, and then everyone else is just a lot cheaper, but DraftKings really likes Damian Harris. Now, the thing is, Sony Michel is eligible to come off the IR, and I didn't see an official word on that, but I was able to scrape some news over on Twitter, and I saw a beat writer say, even if Sony Michel is activated, it's more than likely going to be for a reserve role. So I don't think we have to worry about Sony Michel getting into Damian Harris's amount of touches he's going to get. Now, again, I mean, we've seen crazy things with the New England Patriots backfield where it would never surprise you if Sony Michel came out and got 20 carries, because that's just the kind of trolling that Bill Belichick likes to do. But assuming Sony Michel is just in a reserve role, even if he's activated, if he's not, I mean, whatever. But if he's activated, I can't assume he's going to be really have a role in this offense. So Damian Harris, we should expect him to be the main just early down back here. James White and Rex Burkhead, they're going to handle pass catching duties, while Harris will just take care of the work on the ground. And actually last week, that in week 8 against Buffalo, he had 19.2 fantasy points, carried the ball 16 times, had over 100 yards, and got into the end zone as well. So at least he had a good game last week. So that's just going to hopefully make Bill Belichick want to give him some more touches. So I like Damian Harris here. I know he's super expensive, so it might be hard to fit him in like your main lineup, especially if you're playing both quarterbacks. And if you want to pair like Cam Newton with one of his wide receivers, like I believe Jacoby Myers is close to 10,000. So they really priced up the main options in the Patriots offense, unfortunately. But Damian Harris, the volume should be good. He could get you around 15 to 20 touches, which that's fine in a good matchup versus the New York Jets. Now, DVOA-wise, they're actually a lot better versus the run compared to the pass, but still overall, fantasy points-wise, they're giving up 26.7 DraftKings points per game to running backs, which is 26 in the league, about 100 rushing yards per game, and they're getting beaten up through the air as well by running backs, although that's not going to be Damian Harris's role, so I think James White, Rex Burkhead can definitely make some noise in there, but Harris, he's fine from a volume standpoint, but I gotta say that price tag is very hefty for someone that's not going to be really involved in the passing game, so I totally understand if you don't want to play Damian Harris, but the work on the ground should be secure, and if he falls into the end zone, I think you'll be decently happy. Now, James White, $6,400. I definitely like James White here because he's definitely going to have a role in the passing game. He did play almost 50% of the snaps last week. If you're looking at how the running backs were used for Patriots last week, Burkhead was at 49%, James White was at 48%, and I believe Harris was around 30%. So really, it's a bit of a messy backfield, and that's something we expect from the Patriots. But White, he's a capable pass-catching option. If you're looking at his pass-catching numbers this season, he actually has a 20% target share, which is pretty good, about 5 targets per game, over 30 receiving yards per game. It's just, again, he's going to split work with Rex Burkhead, and Rex Burkhead's cheaper, and he gets some work on the ground as well. He's actually averaging 6.5 carries per game. Meanwhile, James White's only at 2.5 carries per game. Now, James White's been a little bit more involved in the passing game, just looking at their target share, but again, it's just a messy backfield. I'd like to get exposure to probably one of these guys, and I mean, James White, Rex Burkhead are both fine options. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd side with Burkhead just because he technically did have he played 1% more of the snaps last week, and he gets some carries on the ground in addition to being a pass-catching option as well, and again, you can save about $2,000. But James White, I think he's viable here, and like I said, the Jets have actually given up over 6 catches per game to running backs, which is right in James White and Rex Burkhead's wheelhouse, so I do have interest in both, and they're about half the price tag, if not even more than less than half, than Damian Harris, and I can't expect Damian Harris to really get anything through the air, only half a target per game, so maybe he gets a target, but outside of that, that's going to be the roles for James White and Rex Burkhead. Now, we have Michael Pirine here at $5,800, and I'll just group that in with Frank Gore at $2,800, so really, this is going to be a split, and their snap counts would suggest that as well. Pirine, he'll be a little bit more involved in the passing game, but we should see similar touches for the most part. But given the fact that Frank Gore is only $2,800 compared to Pirine at $5,800, I would feel more inclined to play Frank Gore just to save the money and spend up at other positions, because I don't think the difference from Pirine to Frank Gore is that much different to where we really need to pay $3,000 more for Pirine over Frank Gore. I know rostering Frank Gore is never fun just because it's Frank Gore. I mean, he's not going to bust a 60-yard touchdown play. He's just not really capable of that at this point. I mean, the guy's nearly 40 years old. But he's cheap. He'll see some volume. He should get around double-digit carries. Maybe he gets a target or two. And if he falls into the end zone, you'll feel pretty good about it. Now, both these both these guys obviously have the same matchup, so the matchup's very good for them because the Patriots have actually really struggled versus the run this season. They're ranked 30th DVA versus the run, and they're allowing 26.3 DraftKings points per game to the position, which is 24th in the league, 120 rushing yards per game, and rushing touchdown per game as well. So I like the matchup here, and I think they're both playable. It's just we can get a better price for Frank Gore. If I'm going to play Perine just because he's going to be a little bit more involved in the passing game, sure, but Frank Gore's $3,000 cheaper and should see somewhat similar touches there. And then that's really all I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about Taylor, Ty Johnson, Jacob Johnson. Ty Johnson's only $200. Maybe if you just want to go an absolute YOLO pump play. Because he was at least on the field just a little bit last week. I believe he had 3 carries. But again, I typically like to take shots on cheap tight ends or cheap wide receivers because they have a little bit more upside to hit a big play. Because for the most part, a backup running back's not going to come in for a carry and just bust off a 70-yard touchdown. Meanwhile, if a wide receiver comes in that's cheap, maybe there's a busted coverage and he just happens to get deep, and things can happen a little bit easier that way for wide receivers than they can for running backs. But with that being said, we can move on to the wide receiver position now. Jamison Crowder, $11,200. So unfortunately, he's not going to have Sam Darnold. But in the games that Jamison Crowder's played this season, even some with Joe Flacco, he's been good every single week. Jamison Crowder's having a pretty good season on a very poor Jets offense. And he's had at least double-digit targets in every single game he's played this season. As you can see, about 11 targets per game, a 31% target share, a 67% weighted opportunity share, and nearly 100 receiving yards per game. So Jamison Crowder, I know he's super expensive, but the volume should be there, and he's actually been playing very, very well this season. In the matchup versus Patriots, so they're going to be without Stephon Gilmore, which is definitely a boost to these Jets wide receivers because he's one of the best corners in football, so it just softens things up a little bit, but they're still on the 9th fewest points per game to wide receivers, and their 19th DVA versus the pass, but you got to keep in mind, no Gilmore, so it softens up a little bit, and I would expect the Jets to be playing from behind here. They are 9.5-point dogs at home, so this should be a pass-heavy game script, and I mean, I like Crowder, it's just he is super expensive, so it's not going to be super easy to fit him in. He's got Joe Flacco throwing the football, that's never fun. But just from a volume and just talent standpoint, because the guy has been very good, he's made some really nice plays this season, I think he's a good option. It's just a matter if you can afford him. Overall, if I had to pick one spend-up guy, it's going to be Cam Newton just because he's a quarterback and he runs the ball as well, so you're kind of getting a hybrid running back situation there. Jamison Crowder, I guess I would say he's second over Damian Harris, even though Damian Harris should get a lot of work. But, Crowder is a wide receiver as a 9.5-point dog. It would not surprise me if he goes for over 100 yards and finds the end zone, and he's been just playing fantastic this season. Now, Jacoby Myers, $9,000, so there's not going to be any Julian Edelman, and there's going to be no N'Keal Harry here for the New England Patriots. So, Jacoby Myers is kind of stepped up as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And also, Damiere Byrd at 6,800, he's pretty much the wide receiver 2, and those are your two top pass-catching options for Cam Newton outside of any of the running backs. And Myers, he actually had 10 targets last week. Now, it only amounted to about 13 points, but again, if he's going to see close to 10 targets in this one versus a pretty poor Jets secondary, I don't think that's a bad play at all. And if you're looking at how the Jets have done versus wide receivers this season, it's pretty soft. 31st DVA versus the pass and allowing 41.2 DraftKings points per game to the position, which is 25th in the league, and nearly 200 receiving yards per game as well, just to wide receivers. So Jacoby Myers, pretty much slotting in as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I know it's not in a thrilling offense, and Cam Newton's throwing for less than 200 yards passing per game this season, but it's a super soft matchup. He's going to have to throw the ball to someone. He's not going to finish the game with 0 passing yards. So Jacoby Myers, he should be a decent focal point of this offense. So I do like Jacoby Myers, and he's $2,200 cheaper than Jamison Crowder. So if you just want to play more Patriots than Jets, you can save some money, and they should get similar volume here. Julian Edelman, he is out, so we can't really talk about him. But Damiere Byrd at $6,800, I do think he's a pretty solid play, especially if you can get all the way up to Jacoby Myers. Now, we certainly didn't see the amount of targets that Jacoby Myers saw last week. I think he only had 4. Instead of 4, so actually I can pull it up. Yeah, 4 targets last week and 2 targets the week before that. But he literally played on 100% of the team snaps. So he's on the field, he's running routes, so that's pretty much all I can ask for, and you get a nice discount off of Jacoby Myers as well. So I do like Damiere Byrd, and like I just mentioned, it's a very soft matchup versus the Jets, and he was literally on the field for 100% of these snaps. So we don't have to worry about him seeing playing time because he's going to be on the field. So I do like Byrd. Harry, he's out. And then after that, we can get into the Jets secondary wide receiving options. So we have Braxton Berrios, we have Denzel Mims, and we have Rashad Perriman. I guess we have Jeff Smith as well. So the last time the Jets played, it was just Denzel Mims because Jamison Crowder was out and Brashad Perriman out. They're two top wide receivers. So Denzel Mims played pretty much 100% of the snaps. I think it was actually at like 98 or 99% of the snaps, but it was pretty much him. But now we're going to have Perriman back and we're going to have Jamison Crowder, so that's definitely going to redistribute the targets and the amount of snaps people are going to be playing because those are going to be the two top dogs. Now, if I had to rank all these Jets wide receivers, I would obviously have Crowder number 1. I'd have Perriman number 2. Then after that, I guess it could get a little bit tricky. I would say Mims 3, Jeff Smith 4, and then Braxton Berrios 5. And anyway, let's talk about Braxton Berrios first. So he played around 85% of the snaps last week. And the guy actually had a pretty productive game. He had 11 targets, caught 8 of them. I forget exactly how he finished fantasy points-wise, but it was a somewhat decent game. But again, this is going to change now because we have Crowder and Perriman back. Although Crowder is actually questionable, but he's fully expected to play in this game. If he happens to be out, that would change some things, but I'm assuming he's going to be good to go. So we're going to have to expect his snap count to go down and his targets to go down. So he's kind of an uninspiring play for me at $5,400. Denzel Mims, 5,000. He was super popular last week. I think I know people were pretty excited about stacking the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're going to run back with a free Denzel Mims, and I totally got it. I had some interest in Denzel Mims. He had a good start to the game, especially at his price point. Then he didn't really do anything else. Now, he played nearly 100% of the snaps, so I assume he's going to be on the field for a good portion of this game, but you got to keep in mind, Crowder and Perriman did not play in that one, so I can't really expect him to play around 100% of the snaps once again, but he should be on the field, and he's an okay option. $5,000 though. I wish he was a bit cheaper. I feel like he's kind of, I don't know. I don't think you're getting great value there. But going on to someone I actually do like, Brashad Perriman at $4,200. So actually in week 6 when he did play with Joe Flacco, he had 8 targets in that game, caught 4 of them, but had 62 receiving yards and 10.2 fantasy points. Not the worst game in the world. And look, Brashad Perriman, he's a guy that can make a big play happen. And Joe Flacco, he's not afraid to go deep down the field. Now, it might not be pretty, but he's not afraid to do it. He does have a big arm at times. And I actually think Perriman's a pretty solid play at $4,200. At games he's played this season, only about 4.5 targets per game. But again, situations has changed just because, Sam Darnold's not playing. Joe Flacco's in. It just changes things a little bit. But Brashad Perriman, I just feel like he's a bit underpriced. I think he should be more expensive than Denzel Mims and Braxton Berrios. So I do think you are getting some decent value on Perriman. Then Jeff Smith, $1,000. He had 8 targets last week, and he played around 85% of the snaps. Again, got to keep in mind the 2 of the guys were out, so that's going to, I'd assume it's going to go down. But at only $1,000, he's been involved in the offense this season. He's actually seeing 7 targets per game this year, and he has a 20% target share and an ADOT of 12.6. So he's been involved this season, and $1,000, I definitely think he's a pretty solid value play in this one. Then Chris Hogan, we can't play Chris Hogan. But a cheap wide receiver I think is playable, and it could be one of those YOLO pump plays that ends up hitting a random big play, or maybe just catches a couple of balls, because that's really all you need at $600. But Gunner, I don't remember how to say this guy's name, so I'm not going to try it. But Gunner here, he's got an awesome first name. He actually played 65% of the snaps last week, so he was at least on the field for more than half the offensive snaps, which is pretty good numbers on the season. We can't really look at him. He has 1 catch in the entire year, and it went for 11 yards. So, again, that doesn't make you feel too good, but you got to keep in mind, no Julian Edelman and no Harry, so it opens up some of the offense, and he played 65% of the snaps last week, so it's not that bad. I think he's viable just in case he gets a target or 2, and if he happens to catch one of them, I think you'll take it at only $600. And also, Isaiah Zuber on the Patriots was on the field as well last week. Now, albeit it was only around 9 to 10% of the snaps, but he's only $400, and he might see a target or 2. It's kind of a similar situation to Gunner here, but again, they're down wide receivers, so maybe you get a target or 2 at that price point, and it could end up working out, especially if it happens to be a touchdown. So, but outside of that, I can't really recommend anybody else. And with that being said, we'll move on to the tight end position, which is absolutely awful here. We have Chris Herndon and Ryan Izzo, which that's pretty ugly. Really, I don't really see a situation where you have to play one of these guys. Herndon's just kind of an afterthought in this offense. Looking at his numbers, less than 3 targets per game, less than a 10% target share, and less than 2 catches per game with 12 receiving yards per game. Early in the season, I know this guy was the chalk tight end for a couple of weeks. I think the ship is sailed on Chris Herndon. I don't really think he's that viable of an option. Ryan Izzo, he's questionable for this game, and so is Dalton Keenan. If they both happen to miss, the Patriots don't have a tight end on their roster, so that would be interesting. But Ryan Izzo at least has been involved the past couple of weeks. Like, he's actually scored fantasy points 5.8, 1.8, and 4.4. He's also seen 7 targets the past 3 games as well. So if he happens to play, at least he's had some production. I just don't really think it's a necessity here. But if you need a value play that might catch a couple of balls, Ryan Izzo would fit the bill for that. If looking at how the Jets have done versus Titans this season, it's actually a very soft matchup individually. They're giving up 15.7 DraftKings points per game, which is 26th in the league, nearly a receiving touchdown per game, and about 60 receiving yards per game as well. So Izzo, if he happens to play, which I think he's going to, but again, I can't fully tell you. The Patriots are pretty sneaky about that stuff. But at $1,400, I don't think it's the worst value pump play in the world. And then after that, I just don't go there. I'd rather play a cheap wide receiver. And then we have the 2 defenses, the Patriots or the Jets. I can't recommend playing the Jets defense really ever, but the Patriots defense, it's not like amazing this season, but they're playing the Jets, which they have a team total below 16 this week, and they're 9.5 point favorites. So yeah, we could certainly play the Patriots. And if you want to get absolutely nuts, you could throw them in the captain spot. Now, I don't typically play defenses in the captain spot, but if you want to get contrarian, you could do it in case they happen to get a defensive touchdown or something like that. But they're just super expensive. Like, you really want to pay $7,400 for a defense in the flex spot? Because I don't really want to now. As ugly as this slate is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored, so maybe the Patriots defense does end up working out. Like, they could outscore a skill position player at a similar price point if they happen to get some sacks, some turnovers, and maybe a defensive touchdown. So it can work. It just does feel really gross paying like $7,500 for a defense. And then the kickers, they are what they are. We have Nick Folk and Sergio Castillo here. I mean, if they hit their field goals, they hit their field goals. This should be a pretty ugly game. And if you think both these offenses are going to move the ball a little bit, but stall out, I could see some field goals being kicked, especially from the Jets side of the ball. I can't really see the Jets putting up touchdowns. I can at least see the Patriots scoring a couple of touchdowns, and Cam Newton gets a couple of, goal line touchdowns, and maybe Jacoby Myers finds the end zone, Damian Harris has a decent game, things like that. But the Jets, they might be able to move the ball a little bit, but I can't really see them getting to the end zone too much, so it could be a field goal fest for them. So could make Castillo a fine play at $3,400, but good luck projecting kickers. You just got to hope they hit their field goals. With that being said, guys, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. If you don't follow me over on social media, the handle's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you want to support the channel over on Patreon, that is always much appreciated. Links down in the description below. You can get access into this entire NFL DFS data sheet, which I have for every showdown slate and every Sunday main slate as well. And you can hop into the Discord chat too. But I'm going to get out here, guys. It's past 2 a.m. So if I seem a little bit tired in this video, that is why. But I wanted this to upload at 8 in the morning. And I'm going to plan on sleeping in probably till 10 in the morning. So that'll be very nice after watching football all day. I am super tired. Hope you have a great start to the week. And I'll see you guys in the next one.